بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. ناظرین، پروگرام جی ورڈ میں ہم آپ کو خوش آمدید کہتے ہیں. اس ہفتے ہم بات کریں گے پاکستان اور سری لنکا کے دو طرفہ تعلقات کی. جنوبی ایشیا میں ناظرین سری لنکا واحد ملک ہے جس کے پاکستان کے ساتھ انتہائی دوستانہ، برادرانہ اور جسے کہتے ہیں تصویراتی تعلقات ہیں. اور سری لنکا نے 4 فروری 1948 کو برطانیہ سے آزادی حاصل کی اور اسی سال 1948 میں پاکستان اور سری لنکا کے درمیان سفارتی تعلقات قائم ہوئے. یعنی 4 فروری 2020 کو پاکستان اور سری لنکا اپنے سفارتی تعلقات کی 70ویں سالگرہ منائیں گے. ان گزشتہ 70 برسوں میں دونوں ملکوں کے درمیان تعلقات انتہائی شاندار رہے، لیکن ایک المناک چیز جو سری لنکا کو فیس کرنی پڑی وہ LTTE تھی، یعنی لبریشن ٹائیگرز آف ایلام کی جانب سے جو ایک دہشت گردی تھی. وہ سری لنکا نے بڑی جرت کے ساتھ اس کا مقابلہ کیا اور پھر حتمی طور پر اس کے اوپر قابو بھی پایا. سری لنکا نے اپنی داخلی دہشت گردی پر قابو جس طریقے سے پایا وہ بھی ایک پوری تاریخ ہے اور اس میں پاکستان کی بھی مدد حاصل رہی. پاکستان نے انسداد دہشت گردی میں سری لنکا کی بے پناہ مدد کی. سپورٹس کا میدان ہو، ثقافت ہو، تاریخی ورثہ ہو، دو طرفہ تعلقات ہوں، تجارت ہو، اقتصادیات ہو، کوئی بھی شعبہ ایسا نہیں ہے جس میں سری لنکا اور پاکستان کے درمیان انتہائی شاندار تعاون اور انتہائی شاندار تعلقات رہے ہوں. اسی حوالے سے پاکستان اور سری لنکا کے درمیان انتہائی شاندار تعلقات اور پاکستان اور سری لنکا کے دو طرفہ تعلقات کے حوالے سے آج ناظرین ہماری خوش قسمتی ہے کہ ہمارے ساتھ اسٹوڈیوز میں موجود ہیں پاکستان میں سری لنکا کے ہائی کمشنر نوردین محمد شاہد. اور نوردین محمد شاہد جو ہیں وہ 40 برس کے بعد سری لنکا کی طرف سے پہلے مسلمان سفیر یا ہائی کمشنر ہے جو یہاں پہ تعینات ہوئے ہیں. 40 برس پہلے یقینی طور پہ مسلمان انوائز یہاں پہ رہے، لیکن ایک طویل عرصے کے بعد سری لنکا کی حکومت نے ایک مرتبہ پھر ایک اپنے سینئر ترین اپنے جو سٹیزن ہیں انہیں یہاں پہ بھجوایا. نوردین محمد شاہد بنیادی طور پر پیشے کے اعتبار سے ایک بہت ٹاپ کے لائر ہیں اور وہ سری لنکا میں ان کا بہت بڑا ایک مقام ہے ان کی سیاست میں، ان کی وکالت میں، اور سری لنکا میں اعلیٰ ترین سطح پر انتہائی قدر کی نگاہ سے جانے جاتے ہیں. Thank you so much, Excellency Noordeen Mohamed Shaheid, for joining us and sparing some time for an interview and exchange of views with G News TV. First, I will ask you, Excellency, how would you like to comment on bilateral relations between Pakistan and Sri Lanka at Journal?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much for inviting me to your wonderful studio, and I'm really honored, and it gives me immense pleasure to be in the studio of G News, which is a front runner in Pakistan. Coming back to your question about Sri Lanka-Pakistan bilateral relationship, we have been having a long-term diplomatic relationship for over 70 years. I think that the diplomatic relationship started with Pakistan soon after Sri Lanka gained independence in 1948. If I remember correct, Pakistan got its independence in August 1947. It's just after about 8 months' time Sri Lanka established its diplomatic relationship. I think Sri Lanka is one of those first few countries which established their diplomatic relationship with Pakistan soon after gaining independence. So since then these two countries have been having a kind of brotherly and friendly relations at all times. And this is something that I have always stated in Pakistan, that whatever may be the party or power, party or a government which is in power in Pakistan or for Sri Lanka, irrespective of the parties or the color or the left or right, the countries remained very good relations, very good friends at all times. And and not only that, they helped each other whenever each one is needed the other, and that shows the greater relationship between the countries. Coming to bilateral relations, trade is one of those factors that really brought Sri Lanka and Pakistan together at the initial stage, but nevertheless, because of the distance and because of the cost factor, the business was not as good as what we have in India, because India is so close to Sri Lanka. But certain items like tea and rubber and beetle leaves, I think one of those larger market Sri Lanka has in Pakistan for beetle leaves. And those were the initial bilateral relations that we had with Pakistan. And then in 2005, Pakistan and Sri Lanka signed the first ever trade agreement, which really prompted both countries to advance and enhance the trade relations between the two countries. I think the leaders of both countries visited each other, and it culminated in the signing of the free trade agreement, which has given way for advanced trade relationship between the two countries. Now it has been taken to another level, because I could see that there was some decline in the trade relationship, because Sri Lanka had gone through a war for about 30 years, as you know, and then this agreement was signed in 2005. At that time, the Sri Lanka was fighting its war in Sri Lanka against terror. So now the time has opened up. The Sri Lanka is peaceful, although there was an unfortunate incident last month, but Sri Lanka is still peaceful, and there's a stability in the country. And Pakistan has opened up its doors for investment in Sri Lanka, and I think about Pakistan businessmen have invested in about 25 new ventures, like pharmaceutical items, rubber products, and various other items, like trying to establish a cement plant in Sri Lanka, and apparel, garment factories. So there are my instructions are, and then information available to me, that Pakistani businessmen have almost invested in about 25 new projects, and they are hoping to go further. And Sri Lanka is also hoping to advance its exports to Pakistan, and we are trying to increase our tea exports to Pakistan. And Pakistan is a country with 220 million people. 95% of them are tea consuming population. So Sri Lankan tea is one of the best quality tea in the whole world. So the Sri Lanka High Commission, after I assumed duties, and I found that there was some shortcoming with regard to the price factor, which I have now sorted it out, and a lot of businessmen from Pakistan have expressed interest to import tea from Sri Lanka, and I hope that during my tenure I will see that Sri Lanka will be one of the exporter, the tea exporter to Pakistan.
Excellency, you talked about last month's most unfortunate incident that took place in Colombo. That was series of bomb blasts at various churches, which resulted into killing of over probably 150 worshippers. So would you like to tell us something about that? Who could be possibly behind such attacks in a country which used to be so peaceful?
Well, it was really an unfortunate incident that took place on the 21st of April on the Easter Sunday, and the multiplicity of bomb blasts in Christian churches and in the high-end tourist hotels, five-star hotels, was something which was never anticipated or never expected by the government of Sri Lanka. As you know, the Sri Lanka went through a war for 30 years, and then we defeated terrorism. I think Sri Lanka is one of the countries in the world which defeated terrorism totally in 2009. And then since then Sri Lanka was progressing rapidly, and there was peace and stability, as I told you earlier, and a lot of investments were coming into Sri Lanka, and tourism was in full swing. During this time, this unfortunate incident took place about a month ago. And as you ask me who is responsible and who could be behind it, but it is still a mystery. Although the ISIS or Daesh claimed responsibility after 72 hours or so, but still it remains a mystery, and then the government of Sri Lanka is investigating into the matter, and it is pleasing to note that Sri Lankan government was able to bring the situation under control within a period of 2 weeks' time.
And it has been reported, and definitely it came to through media after confirmation that attackers got training in India. What would you like to say on this? Why Indian intelligence agencies didn't detect this? If they did not detect this, so it could be evident that the attackers or the terrorists got training definitely under the Indian state patronage in India.
Well, it's a complex question to answer, but the fact remains that the Indian government gave the information to the Sri Lankan government with regard to this possible attack.
Advanced intelligence was shared.
Advanced intelligence was shared. And perhaps, they say the incident took place somewhere in 21st of April, but on the 9th of April, Indian government or the Indian intelligence had shared that there is a possible attack in Sri Lanka by a unknown group. Some groups were identified or some names were identified, but the Sri Lankan government did not take it seriously, or they never thought the magnitude of the attack will be so vast and wide, which will bring in losses of life and life to this great amount. But with regard to the Indian involvement, it is usual that neighbor countries share intelligence information with a view to safeguard the countries. In this context, whether the persons or suicide bombers who really exploded the bomb, whether they were trained in India, there is no concrete possible evidence, except the fact that India was aware of this attack and India shared this intelligence to Sri Lankan army, the Sri Lankan intelligence services.
So what is the situation now in Sri Lanka? It was reported that in the aftermath of such attacks, which is definitely strongly condemned and which is very unfortunate, but unfortunately Muslims in Sri Lanka came under attack, which was another very unfortunate aspect of this entire scenario. So why did this happen?
This is another aspect that all of us will have to give our mind and consideration. The suicide bombers, 8 of them who were identified were Muslims, and I must share this information with the Pakistani brothers for them to know that how it happens and how they have got to be careful with their youngsters and children. These 8 young persons who got involved and who committed suicide by exploding the bomb are youngsters who come from very good families, and some of them have studied abroad, some of them studied in England and also in Australia, and they come from very rich families. So it was very astonishing or a bit very surprising to see that how could people from very rich, well-to-do families with sound educational background and with a kind of exposure to the international education could be targeted and could be recruited to this kind of attack. So that is because of the involvement of Muslims. The Muslims were threatened by certain extremist group for reasons, best known to them, but it normally happens in any country. But here is a minority community which consists of 10% of the population of the whole country, who had very good relations with other communities as well. But we never had any problem with the Christian community in Sri Lanka. We have a very, very close relationship with Christian community up to the point of this incident. And that was the reason why Cardinal Bishop Malcolm Renchit immediately after the bomb blast said, please don't target or don't go after or don't blame Muslim community, because there is international or a foreign element involved in this. So what is the foreign element he has disclosed, and who are the people who could be behind it? But again, I would like to keep mum or quiet until the Sri Lankan investigation to find out that who is behind the whole operation.
Viewers, stay with us. Here we will take a short break, and after a short break, we'll get back to you. Viewers, welcome back. You are watching G-Word, and you are listening a special interview of Sri Lankan High Commissioner to Pakistan, Noordeen Mohamed Shaheid. Excellency, there is a long history of cooperation between Sri Lanka and Pakistan as far as security, defense, and counter-terrorism is concerned. And on a good note, definitely Pakistan extended all possible assistance and cooperation to Sri Lanka in overcoming its terrorism when Sri Lanka was confronting a very long war with LTTE. So how would you like to comment on this cooperation from Pakistan?
Well, that's a historical fact that it is always said and shared by Sri Lankans as well as the historians, that if not for the sound cooperation and sound support extended by Pakistan, Sri Lanka wouldn't have been able to win the war against terrorism. But that was true too, because we as Sri Lankans, we have seen for ourselves that Pakistan right throughout the fight against terror by Sri Lanka, it stood by its side and supported it. And that there is a history for it. Why is Pakistan must stand by Sri Lanka? And if I am given a little time, I would be able to say it in a swift and short space, that in 1971, Sri Lanka for the first time had a left-wing organization called Janata Vimukti Paramuna, that is People's Liberation Front. The youngsters of that organization staged a kind of terror activities in Sri Lanka. And that was the time that Sri Lanka had never expected. Sri Lanka was such a peaceful country. Sri Lanka never expected that kind of terror activities. And then it looked up to Pakistan, and Pakistan immediately sent its troops and also supported Sri Lanka as to how, and trained them as to how they could tackle this. And Sri Lanka was successful. And in 1971, there was another important incident that took place. India was on war with Pakistan was on war with India, the Indo-Pakistan war. That is for the retention of the East Pakistan, now known as Bangladesh. And in this war, Pakistan was not allowed to fly over
Indian
airspace.
True.
And then the Pakistan found it very difficult to refuel and then again start off from some point. And Madam Bandaranaike, who was the Prime Minister, Sri Lankan Prime Minister, she was the first ever woman Prime Minister in the world, and she allowed Pakistan to land in the Katunayake International Airport and refuel to its range of flights.
A great gesture indeed, and a very great sport indeed.
So that was the beginning. I think the 1971 was the milestone in the relationship.
Turning point. We may say a turning point in bilateral relations between Pakistan and Sri Lanka.
And Sri Lanka did so, I must say, despite its relationship with India, and undermining its relationship. And at a time that the Pakistan was having a tough time with India, Sri Lanka decided to support Pakistan. And as you correctly said, that was a turning point. And from that onwards, the Pakistan had always stood with Sri Lanka. And during the war and lot of military cooperation and defense defense relationship between both the countries. And even now, I could see, even after I assumed duties as a High Commissioner, I find that many Sri Lankan armed forces and forces from the Navy and Air Force, they are being trained in Pakistan, and Pakistan has very gracefully entertained them with or without payment, and a lot of programs are done by Pakistan government free. And that is a great gesture which has strengthened the security and situation of Sri Lanka.
Excellency, Pakistan's defense industry is growing, and definitely as far as new fighter jets are concerned, that is GF-17 Thunder, that is produced in close collaboration with China. In addition to GF Thunder 17, there are a number of other short and medium range conventional weapons that Pakistan is producing. Would you like to share something that whether Sri Lanka is purchasing the defense equipment from Pakistan, and what's the update on that?
Well, I cannot give you an exact account on this matter, but the fact remains, when there is any defense equipment or apparatures or machines to be purchased by Sri Lanka, the Sri Lanka would certainly place its faith and reliance on Pakistan. And if they have to buy any warfare or weapons or other required equipment for the security reasons of the country, I think definitely Sri Lanka would do the deal with Pakistan, because Pakistan has been a trusted friend and Pakistan has always helped them. Other than that, I don't think that perhaps I have any more information about it. Sorry about it.
So as far as counter-terrorism is concerned, is there any bilateral cooperation, intelligence sharing between Pakistan and Sri Lanka as far as terrorism is concerned?
We have. I think even our President, His Excellency Maithripala Sirisena, visited Pakistan last year, I think, as the chief guest of the Independence Day celebrations, and we signed some important agreements and MOUs, and one of them was defense collaboration and cooperation.
So, Excellency, how you see a new PTI government in Pakistan, which is committed to reforms, which is committed to new Pakistan, that is called Naya Pakistan. So, how would you like to comment on this, that Pakistan is on the path of reforms and new Pakistan? Pakistan is definitely on the path of definitely a war against corruption, and which is definitely, if overcome and if fought properly, it will definitely bring political and economic stability in Pakistan. How would you like to comment on this new Pakistan, Naya Pakistan, and the new government in Pakistan?
When it comes to politics, of course, I'm also a Naya person. I say I'm also a new person. But of course, since last 8 months, I have been observing the political development in this country, since I too was involved in politics back in Sri Lanka as a minority person from a minority community, and I represented a political party. And then I closely observe what is happening in Pakistan. I'm really amazed. I'm really satisfied with the manner the country is leading towards development. I think decisions are taken very concretely and without fear or favor, and I can see that the people of Pakistan are agreeable on one point, that they think that they have a leader who is not corrupt and who will not be corrupt. And that is the basis of development of any country, because the leadership must win the hearts and minds of the people, and the leadership must always command respect. Even there are economic issues, there is an economic crunch in the country due to heavy debt deficit. The people still are prepared to support the government. And when I speak to many people, they say, right, okay, that we have to go through this because there is a huge debt which has to be settled by this government, but we are confident that our leader is not corrupt and he will take this country to the in the right direction. So that kind of belief is always a must for any developing country. So that is happening in Pakistan.
Okay, Excellency, this corruption menaces everywhere in the world, and it is deep-rooted in South Asian countries. Would you like to share the Sri Lankan experience, how Sri Lanka is fighting corruption?
Well, the Sri Lankan government in 2015 came to power with the slogan that they will completely eradicate corruption, because they said the corruption was rampant in the last government, and that was the basis on which the new government was formed. But when I look at the performance of Pakistan during the last 1 year and performance by Sri Lanka during the last 4 or 5 years, but I think Pakistan was very fast and Pakistan was committed, and Sri Lanka is, I must say with all due respect, and Sri Lanka is behind. But there are certain political issues, because decision making is very, very important. For you to deal with corruption, and you have to take a very strong decision, and that decision must come very solid, and then it has to be implemented. But that is happening in Pakistan. That is what I could see, and that is why the people are happy, and the people have placed strong reliance in the government for the reason that decisions are being made and the decisions are implemented.
Viewers, we'll continue our discussion with His Excellency Noordeen Mohamed Shaheid, Sri Lankan High Commissioner for Pakistan. But here we will take a break. Stay with us. We'll get back to you after the break. Viewers, welcome back to program G-Word, and you are listening to a special interview with Sri Lankan High Commissioner to Pakistan, Noordeen Mohamed Shaheid. Excellency, another important fact is peace and stability in South Asia. That over last 70 years, we have seen South Asia remain unstable due to conflicts between two major powers, India and Pakistan. You have been jurist, you have been a political worker. What do you think, how durable peace could be established in South Asia? How conflicts between Pakistan and India could be resolved?
I think so long as the Pakistan-India conflict remains unresolved, I don't think there could be any solution for a durable peace and stability in the South Asian region. Because these two countries are the major powers, I should say, next to India, Pakistan, and the other 5 countries or 6 countries rather, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Maldives, Afghanistan and Bhutan, but they are small countries with a smaller population, so they totally depend on them. And therefore, the efforts must be taken by not only the countries that are situated around these two major powers, but also by the international community, to see that most important striking dispute between India and Pakistan be resolved. All what I could say is that the major point, the major issue that remains between Pakistan and Sri Lanka, Pakistan and India, is the Kashmir issue, and that has been
a flashpoint.
That has been, I think, purposely, when the independence was granted, I think by the colonial masters, have deliberately planted this issue, and that issue is still continuing, and it has become a major political issue in both countries as well, because in political slogans and political propaganda, and this issue has become, in the recent Indian elections we saw it. So therefore, what I am saying is that a meaningful solution to be found out, and the issue that really cut across the two countries, which remains tall, being unresolved, must be with the interference or intervention rather of the international community must be resolved. I think several resolutions that were passed in the United Nations have not yet come true. As far as Sri Lanka is concerned, I think that we have been tried throughout non-committal, and we have always supported the sovereign state of both the countries and non-interference. But yet again, as a country which is situated very close and in the center of Indian Ocean, and we are very concerned, and we want to see that the India and Pakistan get involved in a dialogue, a meaningful dialogue to resolve this issue. And I think the time has come for it. I think the Prime Minister Imran Khan has now been accepted as a leader who is all dedicated to see that the Pakistan comes out of the negative perception which had been sort of spread in the international arena or international community. Now, with his great gesture that he exhibited soon after the Balcott incident, and by handing over the Air Force person, I think he showed to the whole world that Pakistan is now ready for peace. And his statement that if you take one step, I will take two steps, and that applied to both, I suppose, for peace or fight or whatever. And then if you take one step, and I will take two steps. But it's a great statement of a statesman who had newly elected Prime Minister of the country. And that statement I consider is one of the noblest and very highly regarded statement by all intellectuals in the world.
Excellency, other than conflicts and dispute between India and Pakistan, another aspect is that to enhance cooperation among South Asian states, a very wonderful organization was created that was named as South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. Our organization totally committed to development and cooperation, trade, economy, and other things in South Asia. But unfortunately, Excellency, if we see over the last 3 years, SAARC summit could not take place due to non-cooperative attitude by India, because India turned down invitation number of times. How would you like to say the future of SAARC in South Asia?
It's really unfortunate. As you correctly said, for the last 4 years, the SAARC summit could not be held because it has to be held in Pakistan. And this is Pakistan's turn. And in India's decision not to take part, it could not be held because one of the rules is the summit could be held with all 8 nations taking part. If one of the nations is not taking part, then you cannot hold the summit. So it has come to a standstill. But I hope now India has a very strong government, and Prime Minister Modi has been re-elected as the Prime Minister of the country. And I think during his time, he would see that this problem is sorted out. And very soon since he has got a very amenable and friendly Prime Minister in Pakistan, I think it is very easy for both of them to discuss about it. And very soon, I believe that the SAARC summit will take place in Islamabad.
So you see a very brighter future of SAARC as a regional cooperation organization in South Asia?
I hope so. I hope so, because there is no, but of course these countries are now engaged in various other ASEAN and SAICA and various other organizations for the reason that this SAARC could not be brought out as a successful organization, although they have a wonderfully acceptable program by all countries, and they have solutions for development between the countries and among the countries. But with all that, something is missing, and that missing point will have to be filled. And I hope Mr. Imran Khan and Mr. Modi, the two prime ministers of these two great nations, will see that other small brothers who are surrounded by them will be benefited by their amity and committee in this direction.
Excellencies, this tourism is a wonderful industry around the world. We have seen that Dubai was a place of desert but turned into a wonderful tourist destination. There are a number of countries in the world which are earning billions of dollars from tourism industry, and tourism is also one of the things which is closely linked with the SAARC. How strong is the tourism potential in Sri Lanka, and how Pakistanis can benefit the tourism in Sri Lanka?
Well, when it comes to tourism, although the Dubai has now become a tourist resort, but it's an artificial resort. As you said, it's a desert which has turned out to be, with all the artificial decorations, it has become a, but if you really want to see the natural tourism, that you can see in Pakistan, you can see it in Sri Lanka, you can see it in India, because the God Almighty had blessed these countries with natural environment, natural atmosphere. And Sri Lanka is one of those beautiful countries in the world where you get enough of places to visit which you don't get in any other country. Even in Pakistan, and I find that beautiful places. And there are certain places that I visited, I found, my God, but Pakistan is so beautiful, and why this negative perception about this country outside the world? And furthermore, there is a lot of room for religious tourism in this country. That is one of those important matters I'm interested. The government also is very interested in promoting religious and cultural tourism in the country. And there is one important aspect that I must tell the world, that if I get an opportunity, I will say it louder. See, Pakistan is a country which is ready for diversity and for a diversified culture, to share its diversified hopes and beliefs in getting around other people and see that we can live together in harmony. One important thing that I could say is the protection and protection of Buddhist artifacts and Buddhist heritage in this country. And I come from a country where Buddhists, it's a single Buddhist country, about 72% of the people are Buddhists. And I think that if my friends, my brothers in Sri Lanka, if they get an opportunity to come to Pakistan, if they see for themselves the amount of Buddhist artifacts, cult stupas and the heritage sites like Dharmacharika and Taxila, which is the birthplace for Gandhara civilization, and when you go back to Lahore Museum and Peshawar Museum, the Takhbai and Suat, and when you go to those places, my God, it is a heaven for Buddhists. And now Pakistan has opened it up. I think one of the core concept of Prime Minister is to see that the country is open up for diversity. And
visa regime has also been relaxed.
Yes, the visa regime has been liberalized now, and now people can't come from the country. But what really happened was that my effort to see that it is promoted from Sri Lanka unfortunately got halted because of the Balakot incident, and Sri Lanka could not fly its airlines, Sri Lankan Airlines, for some time. Now we have started Colombo-Karachi operation, and Sri Lankan Airlines very soon will fly to Lahore, and we were planning to extend it to Islamabad as well. And I think, I have met some of those ministers like Zulfikar Buhari, who is in charge of tourism, and Mr. Latif Khan, the senior minister for tourism and cultural promotion from KPK. And they are very much involved, and they are very, very active, and they're trying to see this cultural tourism, religious tourism is promoted in this country. And I hope that with our assistance and their support, this could be made a reality.
Excellency, time is short, and while wrapping up the interview, we would like to ask you a question: how you see the future of Pakistan-Sri Lanka relations in the days to come?
Definitely, it's very positive, and I must say that we can start from cricket, and everybody is enjoying cricket these days. The international cricket is going on, and I must say that Sri Lanka is one of those great cricket playing nation because of Pakistan. And you remember there was a great gentleman, a great distinguished person called Abdul Hafiz Kardar, and who was the first ever chairman of the Pakistan Cricket Board. And he was instrumental in getting Sri Lanka into ICC. And he really fought hard when England and Australia vetoed whenever an application for the entry of Sri Lanka to cricket, international cricket. And it was Mr. Abdul Hafiz Kardar who really fought for Sri Lanka and stood by Sri Lanka and saw to it that Sri Lanka has entered international cricket. And furthermore, before he died in 1990, he died in 1997, he saw Sri Lanka in the Pakistan soil defeated Australia, I suppose, and then became the World Cup. And Sri Lanka in that way, with all the problems when most of the countries in the world had refused to come and play in Pakistan, Sri Lanka took the trouble and took the risk and come and played in 2009, I suppose. Although they had to face some unfortunate hiccups and some miscreants really tried to create a problem, the God saved all of them. And then again, that relationship continues. And I must tell you that to promote Sri Lanka-Pakistan relationship, and I have made a request to the Honorable Prime Minister, Imran Khan, and I have sent this message. I hope that the message has received him. And I told him that he, as the captain of 1992 team which won the World Cup for Pakistan, and Sri Lanka as the world team, the cricket team which won the World Cup in 1996 in Pakistan. And both leaders are politicians in their respective countries. Imran Arjuna Ranathinge is a minister, cabinet minister in Sri Lanka. And I have spoken to a few of them and they are prepared. And they can display an exhibition match in either Islamabad or in Lahore. And Arjuna Ranatunga from Sri Lanka and that team which played for 1996 and the team 1992. In fact, I had an occasion.
Come and play.
I had an occasion to speak to Mr. Javid Miandad over the phone, and when I told him, he said, "Why don't you speak to the Prime Minister Imran Khan? If he say yes, and we are prepared." And I hope that would be the another turning point in Pakistan-Sri Lanka
relations. Thank you so much.
And we will take it forward from that onwards.
Yes, thank you so much. Indeed, a very good proposal that there should be a goodwill match between definitely the teams of 1992 and 1996 of Pakistan and Sri Lanka. Excellency Noordeen Mohamed Shaheid, High Commissioner of Sri Lanka for Pakistan, thank you so much for sparing some time and sharing your views about Pakistan-Sri Lanka relations and overall situation in South Asia. Viewers, thank you so much for watching this interview. Goodbye from the studios till our next program.